This flock was hatched April 30th, 2025, and will go to processor on June 11th, 2025. So evening chores, Jared is exercising the birds. I mentioned in the most recent video that we exercise the birds on a daily basis, and I said not being sarcastic at all, and that's what it amounts to. We have them get up and move around, and generally when they get up and move around, they're triggered to go to the feeders, go to the waters, and they'll get their fill, and then they will find a place to sit back down. So flock number, we're at 417 now. So that's the flock population. So that's just walking behind them, and that reaction we get is kind of like just a response from them to being stirred around their pen. So we are on our second skid of feed. So overall, during production, we plan on the whole flock eating 4,000 pounds of feed. That's 2 tons. So they eat about 10 pounds a piece during production. And it's interesting when we run those numbers, like let's compare them to egg production chickens. On a daily basis, do they eat a lot more than egg production chickens? Interesting that when you really run those numbers, the math proves out that they actually don't eat more than our typical egg production chickens on a daily basis. So that gives credibility how efficient they are in converting feed to growth and then converting feed to meat as they grow and finish. So basically, in the beginning, when we start them, we see a lot of growth in their frame, in their skeletal structure, in their overall size. And then as they attain their maximum frame and skeletal structure in their overall size, then we start to see them fill out. And then we start to noticeably observe meat production. We are able to actually identify that they're converting feed to meat, and they're distributing it specifically to the chicken breast, to the chicken thighs, and to the chicken legs. So as far as the math, the reason I say the math bears it out and proves how efficient they are is because when we have egg production chickens, we plan on them eating about 1/4 pound of feed per day. And so when we talk about these birds, we know from experience that it takes us about 10 pounds on average per bird from start to finish to successfully get meat production at the amount that we want over 6 weeks from each bird. So when we take 10 pounds divided by 42, we get about 1/4 pound of feed per day. There is a difference. Our egg production chickens, when they're mature egg production chickens and they're laying eggs, we feed them a 16% protein layer mash that's a real fine ground consistency. With these birds, they're eating a crumble, and it's a much higher protein. It's a 22% protein. And it is more cost in their feed than in the feed for our egg production chickens. Like we may have, and this is just estimating based on some of the last figures I can recall, we may have $11 or $12 in 50 pounds of complete feed for our hens that are producing eggs, whereas we may have $16 to $17 in 50 pounds for our meat birds. Now, with our meat birds, we prefer to buy the feed 2,000 pounds at a time. We don't just buy it by the 50 pound usually. We do get it packaged in 50 pound bags, but we buy a lot of them at one time, and we try to bring them in here on their pallets, so by the skid. So for this flock, we purchased 2 skids of feed. So 80 50-pound bags of feed in other words, 4,000 pounds. So, but it is pretty cool that when you run the numbers, they really eat the same quantity as our egg production birds. They're really not eating more in terms of quantity. They are being fed higher protein. Their feed is costing slightly more than the feed for our hens, but in terms of quantity per day, they're actually eating about the same. So that is pretty amazing, because they can take that amount of feed and in 42 days accomplish production of poultry. Whereas, of course, there is a demand on our hens to produce an egg almost every day, most of the year. But I don't know, it's pretty amazing that they can, on the same amount of feed, in just 42 days, produce anywhere from a 5 to 7 pound whole frozen chicken as the outcome at the end of production. So I did mention we are at 417 birds in this flock. The goal really is to stay above 400. So we're in pretty good shape. We are on day 27. We need to get to day 42. The birds are looking good, and they're just going to grow by leaps and bounds every day between now and day 42. June 11th, 2025 will be the day that we take them to the processor. So they'll be on full feed until June 10th, and we'll take feed away on June 10th to accomplish what we call feed withdrawal. So maybe we'll talk about that in the next video. Had two of them having a standoff right there. Y'all, thanks for supporting the channel. We greatly appreciate it. We hope that you have a good week. Let us know if you have any questions. And we enjoyed having the day off today for Memorial Day here. Definitely a somber kind of holiday when we take into consideration what it represents and why we acknowledge it. So certainly bearing great humility and gratitude this day for what people have sacrificed for the United States of America and for freedom. So thinking of y'all. Thanks for supporting our channel. Have a super week. Last comment, I haven't got to reply yet, but saw some great feedback on the channel, I think from the last video, about, with meat chickens, a couple of the drawbacks is they tend to be very dirty birds to raise. and that's legitimate. That is because of their manure load. So they have a really heavy manure load, really heavy concentration of ammonia in the manure load, and that causes a lot of moisture and compaction on the floor when you're raising them indoors. It also causes a coating of their manure load over any grass and any vegetation growing on the soil if you happen to be raising them outside. And that's part of why if you raise them outdoors on grass, they really need to be moved and rotated, because they will cover an area of vegetation with their manure load in no time. In no time. We've raised them outside, and we know that that's true because we've observed it and we've had to manage for that. So that's a legitimate point. They can be very dirty to raise, but that requires a little bit of extra management with adding bedding frequently to refresh the floor condition. And another observation that the viewer made about meat chickens was that once they start getting a little older, they just drop dead. And that's part of why we always promote, when you're raising meat birds, sticking to a 6-week production schedule, that 42-day production schedule, because really by then we really believe we've maximized growth potential in terms of how big they can get and how much meat they can put on that frame, and we've minimized flock loss as much as possible at that point. We found that any more time after 6 weeks, you're really not gaining anything in terms of meat production to any great extent, and you're just running higher and higher risk each day that you're going to lose the birds to really heart failure is the main concern. So had those 2 points and some feedback from a viewer and wanted to acknowledge they are great points, and I'm looking forward to getting to reply to those. So thanks, viewers. We enjoy reading your feedback, and we hope you'll join us for more videos. Thanks so much.